Hello, people of the internet. Welcome to episode 9 of Fully Endorsed. I'm your host for today's episode, Andres Perez, aka Kaiji Noir. Here with me is my co-host, Mr. Dylan McCandless, aka Super DM 64.
Yo.
And so for today's episode, we are taking a look at the 1990 Sam Raimi horror action superhero hybrid film, Darkman. And so for me, I've always been a big fan of Sam Raimi's films ever since I started watching the Spider-Man films growing up, eventually learning about the Evil Dead trilogy and seeing that. And I think it was through my research of Sam Raimi's filmography that I came across a superhero character that he created way back when. Within the period of, I want to say this was like during that period, like in between the Evil Dead movies. I'm not really sure when they came out yet, but yeah, I checked out Darkman probably within high school, maybe somewhere between high school and college, and I grew to love the movie for its unique sort style and charm. So I decided to choose this movie to talk about it. And, hopefully we'll see what Dylan thinks. So, for you, Dylan, what has been your overall exposure to Sam Raimi in general?
To answer your question, this is after Evil Dead 2, but before Army of Darkness.
Thank you very much.
Army of Darkness, I believe, was in 92, and Evil Dead 2 was in the late 80s.
Yes, you are correct. So, yeah, Evil Dead 2 was 87, Darkman is 90, it was 3 years later, and Army of Darkness was 2 years after that.
Yeah. Pretty much the exact same story as you. One of my earliest sort of cinematic memories is, well, not earliest, but one of the most impactful, was going to a theater and sitting down and watching Spider-Man. And then, saw the other two also in theaters. Eventually went back and saw the Evil Dead trilogy, and Darkman is something that I've known about for a long time, but never got around to watching. Until now.
And just curious, did you ever saw any of Sam Raimi's like post-Spider-Man movies, which there aren't a whole lot of? There was Drag Me to Hell in 2009, Oz the Great and Powerful in 2013, and I guess like coming next year will be Doctor Strange 2.
We'll see. I have not seen Drag Me to Hell, but I might as well have, because I've seen so many reviews and videos making fun of that movie. So I pretty much know the plot, even though I haven't actually seen the film. I have seen Oz the Great and Powerful. I saw it in the theater with my family. So I am familiar with that film. And I'm very excited about the possibilities of him taking over Doctor Strange 2. Sad as it was to see the director of the first film go, I know that Sam Raimi is a Doctor Strange fan because he dropped a reference to Doctor Strange in Spider-Man 2, I believe.
Oh, right, yeah, where J. Jonah Jameson was coming up with a name for Dr. Octopus, and he was like, Doctor Strange? I think that one's taken, sir.
Yeah. I believe that was Ted Raimi or maybe the black guy. I don't know that actor's name, and the only other thing I know him from was that he was the cop in Sister Act. Have you ever seen Sister Act?
I've never seen Sister. That's the Whoopi Goldberg movie, right?
Yeah, okay. That's a potential episode of this show.
I can only imagine how many people in my subscriber fan base would be interested in hearing my thoughts on Sister Act and Sister Act 2.
One day when we run out of things that we're really passionate about, I'll fully endorse Sister Act.
might as well go all the way and talk about, Theodore Rex.
I don't know if that movie holds up, but I have a lot of nostalgia.
Probably not. All right,
but
so Darkman. So
yeah.
This came from Sam Raimi's attempt at creating either a Shadow movie or the Batman. And you can definitely tell this movie has a lot of Shadow and Batman in its blood. Like, this was during that era in Hollywood where it's like, Batman was a huge success the year prior. And so I think, I remember you and I talked about this while we were watching the movie together, how Hollywood took the wrong lesson from Batman's success. Instead of trying to create other superhero movies, that with characters as iconic as Batman, like Superman, or there was an attempt to create the death of Superman, but other than that, they, instead of making a movie based off of Spider-Man or the X-Men or whatever, they just took the success of Batman saying, let's create more pulp fiction hero movies, and sort of...
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know what Hollywood was thinking at the time. This whole superhero renaissance that we're living in right now could have happened 20 years earlier. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they looked at Batman's success and said, people are really into 30s detective stories. And then we got a Dick Tracy movie with Madonna in it and a bunch of other weird shit.
Yeah, we got The Phantom with that actor from Titanic. We got the Shadow eventually with
let's see.
Alec Baldwin, that's who he
Alec
was.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And so besides that, it was kind of interesting to have this like original take. So I always kind of appreciated whenever, creators or whenever like artists or creators, they kind of take something that's like clearly inspired by something that they loved or something they grew up with and kind of putting their own spin on things. And so here we have someone who is a big time horror fan and, old school superhero fan, and kind of mixing a blending of the two, where it's kind of advertised as a superhero vigilante story, but it's got some elements of like the tragic universal monster movies in its DNA, I would say. And so
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at images now. I feel like they cast Alec Baldwin purely on the strength of his nose.
Yeah, I was about to mention that as well.
He's got that shadow pointy nose that goes just over. I think they've supplemented it with some prosthetics. I'm not sure about that.
Although, do you think Liam Neeson could have made a decent shadow based on his nose alone?
He probably could have, yeah. If he hadn't already done Darkman, that might have been. The best thing that probably came out of this trend, and it's not really a like pulp like detective thing, but it is another like classic character from the 30s. Let's bring him back. Is The Mask of Zorro?
You're
right. Probably the best thing to come out of that. I don't know if it was inspired by the same thing, but it is sort of tangentially related. That was in '98, so maybe I'm completely reaching here.
But it's possible, yeah. I mean, maybe after these movies were like, they were not bombs per se, but they were disappointments in most of these. I can't say for certain, but I want to say that a lot of these superhero movies were disappointments in the eyes of these studios. So maybe they decide to go in a slightly different direction. They're like, maybe not. Let's not go so much in a pulp fiction, pulp hero, pulp character, but let's go with a character who with a similar sort of vigilante background, who is also as old, if not older, than a lot of these characters. But let's not try to go the whole Danny Elfman, Tim Burton vibe with this.
Right, that's the other thing that Batman 89 did, is that everybody had to be Danny Elfman or hire Danny Elfman.
Right, which in the case of Darkman, its score just screams Batman 89 all over. It's like I had you guessing who it was, and you just reached out and got it on the first try.
I was like, oh, that's Danny Elfman. Like, why are we even playing? Why are we even playing this game? That's clearly Danny Elfman. And I gotta say, I think the score is maybe the weakest part of the movie, just because it's just Elfman doing Elfman. Like, it's just like a riff on what he did a year earlier.
True. But at the same time,
there's nothing very special about it. There's nothing that really stands. I'm glad that it happened.
Yeah.
Because it got Elfman to work with Sam Raimi, which eventually led to them working together again on Spider-Man, and Elfman's Spider-Man score is perfect.
Indeed.
So I'm glad that it happened, but it's probably the element of the film that stands out the least. And honestly, it's really melodramatic at points in areas where it doesn't necessarily need to be. Just because like nah, 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 and I'm like, I get it. It's sad or whatever.
At the same time, it's Elfman doing Elfman. It's like, if you're a fan of Elfman, I feel like I would say like Terminator Salvation would be an example of like Elfman just phoning it in, Whereas here it's like, yeah, he just got off of
I
that.
always forget that movie even is Elfman, to be honest with you.
Because it's just so blah and generic. Yet here, it is kind of generic, but at least it's like, it's Elfman generic. It's not just generic work-for-hire movie studio generic, if that makes any sense.
Give you another example, Justice League. Other than those 2 seconds... I'm pretty sure he did, didn't he?
Oh, I'll check right now while you're talking.
Because he reused his 89 Batman theme for like 2 seconds in the movie, and it's the only part of the movie that you're like, oh, okay.
Right. Let us see here. So, list of compositions by Danny Elfman. Let's check the 2010s. He did Wolfman, Alice in Wonderland, Real Steel, Men in Black 3. Oh, okay, Men in Black 3, I can see that. Oz the Great and Powerful, Peabody, Mr. Sherman, 50 Shades of Grey. Age of Ultron.
He does a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay, yes, you're right. He did do Justice League, and he replaced another composer who goes by the stage name of Junkie XL, which is interesting.
Yeah, because I remember it was like a big deal at the time. There was like an article. It was like, he's going to reuse his Batman theme. And is that a good idea? And what does this mean for the film? And these are the kind of things that we had to talk about before coronavirus. And
as opposed to whether or not the movie studio system will still survive this pandemic.
Right. Now it's more like, is Danny Elfman going to have work? Is he going to die? What's going to happen? Like,
is he next on the chopping block? First it was Tom Hanks, then Idris Elba?
It was a different time. But enough of our current woes. Darkman.
Yes, okay, so, Darkman, did you like it?
Yes. Caveat, it's a really weird movie.
Yes, I will most definitely agree with you there.
And
mm-hmm.
I don't know if I fully endorse it. Like, I don't know. It's hard to wrap my head around it, let alone like rate it. You know what I mean? It's such a bizarre film. Sam Raimi is just unleashed in this movie. Like, this is his, because think about it, this is his first movie after being like a huge success, you know, because like the first Evil Dead movie is kind of like a little indie movie,
right?
You know, it picks up some steam. Then he comes back and does Evil Dead 2, which is it a sequel? Is it a remake? Who even the fuck knows? And it like is huge,
right? And that was kind of the movie that put him on the map.
Right, it catapults him into fame. And so this is really the first movie where he's sort of already an established, like, famous director. And I think they kind of just let him do whatever the fuck he wanted.
Right.
And maybe that's to a detriment sometimes.
I will gladly...
Because, boy, is this movie zany as all hell.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Like, I can definitely agree that this movie is not for everyone. It's definitely got his style, and he definitely makes you aware of the fact that it is his style and his alone. And that's honestly, personally, why I love the movie so much, just because of how wacky and zany it was. But I can see it's not for everyone. And
right, it's super fun. It's a fun time. Watch it with other people and riff on it. You'll have the best time doing it that way.
Right. Because like even you can tell at points that Sam Raimi isn't even taking the movie seriously at all.
But it's one of those movies where at points you're just gonna go, what? And like you'll just have to roll with it.
Like my favorite moment is the part where like Peyton Westlake, Darkman, Liam Neeson's character, he's taking his girlfriend Julie out to the carnival or the circus or whatever, and so they're playing a carnival game. And like the guy, I don't know if you call them carnies, the guy who's in charge of the carnival game, he's being an asshole, and he's like, and Peyton Westlake is getting like more and more pissed off until it gets to the point where his blood is boiling, his Darkman powers go into overdrive. He gets green.
Oh, it's so dork.
His dorkness overcomes himself. He's overcome with dorkness. And he gets blue screen and the entire background just burns into flames. He starts breaking the dude's fingers and he recites my favorite line in the whole movie, "Take the fucking elephant!" As he shoves the pink elephant plushie into his girlfriend's face. He's like, take the fucking elephant!
Yeah, and Liam Neeson is really good at that. You know, this is pre-Taken, pre-Star Wars even. This is a young, prime Liam Neeson, and he's take the fucking elephant.
Or there are just parts where he just like hams it up for the camera, where he's like, my hands, they took my hands.
Yeah. Is he attempting an American accent in this movie? Is that what's happening?
Yes, I can definitely see him trying to do an American accent here. He is average American dude.
Right, and it's not working. I just got to be honest. If you're one of those people who complained about Benedict Cumberbatch's American accent in Doctor Strange, you should watch this movie. Because Benedict Cumberbatch did wonderfully.
In comparisons. But I feel like he does a good enough job, and you know, this was definitely, like we mentioned, this is like a good decade before Phantom Menace, and where, you know, other movies that allowed him to do his sort of his natural Irish accent. I think, is it Irish?
He's Irish. He's from Northern Ireland.
I got it right then.
Well, what do you know? We happen to be recording this episode on St. Patrick's Day.
Hooray!
How do you like that?
If only we are allowed to go into pubs and bars again.
Right.
We mentioned before that this was, you know, Sam Raimi. He's got his, you know, his signature all over it. A lot of the camera angles, the wacky zoom ins, the Dutch angles, a lot of the cinematography is definitely of his style, carried over from Evil Dead. And Evil Dead 2.
A lot of those weird like zooms and like off-putting close-ups and like, you know, just stuff like that, and like he cuts in a very weird way. It's hard to describe if you've never seen a Sam Raimi film.
It's almost like cartoony, I would say. Yeah,
you know those moments in Spider-Man where you go, "What?" Like it's that for an hour and a half.
Uh-huh.
That's how long the movie is, right? Isn't it about 90 minutes or?
Let me check right now. Hoping that Wikipedia has the runtime. He has 95 minutes, so it's about like an hour, about an hour and a half long.
Yeah. So like I just said, all those moments from the Spider-Man movies where you like were shaken out of your seat and went, huh? Like what? Like it's that for 95 minutes. That's this movie.
And, of course, a lot of the visuals as well are also really over the top. You know, I mentioned before, there's a lot of like that weird dream sequence, blue screen work to indicate that Darkman is losing control of his emotions. That's another thing. The premise behind Darkman is actually very clever, I would say, very unique, where you mentioned before, it's essentially kind of like what if the Chameleon was a vigilante superhero type of character, where you have Liam Neeson. He plays Peyton Westlake. His character is a scientist. He's developing artificial skin, and unfortunately, the artificial skin can only last up to 99 minutes because, of course, it does. They need a cool number for their superhero-esque movie. His skin can only last 99 minutes in sunlight. And as he is working on this revolutionary invention, his girlfriend Julie is working for a corrupt businessman. She sees that he is doing some shady shit, and in return, he does some dealing with some mob boss named Durant, and Durant ends up attempting to assassinate Peyton Westlake, exploding his lab and stealing the documents that Julie took from her boss's office. So Darkman, or rather Peyton Westlake, survives, and he is taken to a hospital, and due to the excruciating burns that he experienced, they end up performing an experimental surgery that severs his nerves, and it was through severing these like nerves to the brain that causes him to not be able to feel pain. And because he can't feel pain, his adrenaline goes unchecked, which allows him to get angry incredibly fast, as well as experiencing a high amount of superhuman strength. And that's where the whole comic booky levels of science comes in. And so Peyton, now I guess we can call him Darkman at this point, he escapes the hospital and he goes on a revenge / killing spree, trying to get back at Durant and the rest of his men who ruined his life, all while trying to piece his life back together and attempt to live a normal life with Julie again.
And then hijinks ensue. Yeah, it's a cool idea for a superhero. It really is. It combines this idea of like not being able to feel pain with again the whole like chameleon, like master of disguise type thing, where he like is constantly making like new faces and wearing them in his missions. It has like an interesting rule with the time limit. It's a really great premise for a film, which is then executed in an interesting way.
Yeah, it's also one thing that's like it definitely takes a lot of leaps and bounds in logic. Whereas, like, especially when Darkman is trying to disguise himself, he somehow is able to magically alter his height, his weight, and especially the voice of certain people that he imitates. And that's where a lot of, the suspension of disbelief comes in terms of him trying to properly execute these sorts of disguises. At first, I liked how in the his first attempt at disguising and framing one of Durant's top men, he is mostly awkward and tries to stay quiet for the most part. And when he eventually tries to copy Durant, it's like there's this sequence where he's like listening to a tape recording of Durant's voice, and he keeps mimicking it until he properly gets it.
Right, which even still is kind of a weak explanation for how he can do that, but at least they tried. At least they thought about it.
They could have sort of mentioned before, like maybe he was a great impersonator and he just did that because he always did that as a funny gag around his friends and family.
Right, that would have been like a really interesting, really simple thing to set up too. You like have him at a party, or you have him and his girlfriend hanging out, and like she's like, "Do so and so," and then he does like
Walken. He'd be like, "How, Christopher Walken here?"
Oh,
he's like, "Durant, why are you trying to kill Darkman?"
Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed up like Batman? Like. And then like we said, that would have been a really easy way to set that up. But instead, it's just like, again, he just listens to a sound recording like a lot, and he's like, I can do any voice I want. And I'm like, okay.
I guess two other things. It's like, well, the biggest one is like the fact that he survived an assassination attempt on his life, so he could easily go to the police and say, "Hey, that fucker tried to kill me. I'm still alive." And of course, if he did that, there'd be no vigilante movie, of course. And you can always mark it up to, oh, he's crazy now, so he's not thinking straight.
And that would have been an easy thing to explain away, too. All you had to do is establish that the police are corrupt.
Yeah, that's another thing, yeah.
The police won't believe him, even if he comes forward. Tons of movies have done that. It's a simple thing to set up. And had he done so... that would have made more sense.
Yeah, but maybe it might have been like a budgetary thing. Maybe it's like because I feel like this movie is
we can't show the police.
maybe who knows? Because like it feels like a lot of the money was spent on like the action scenes near the end of the film. Meanwhile, a lot of the movie is kind of shot in mostly like isolated locations where they take like an abandoned warehouse or an abandoned factory, or just like a few sets here and there. It doesn't really feel like
this movie. Yeah. This movie doesn't feel like it has like the biggest budget in the world. Like it's definitely not low budget, but it's not high budget either. It's one of those medium budget movies. Remember when those were a thing? Remember when every movie didn't have to be either a tent pole or an indie. There was like this whole spectrum in between. Yeah. This feels like one of those, and I feel like they could have used their budget a little better. It feels like they're really overly ambitious at points, and then underly so, if that's a word, in other areas. Compare it to another film that came out, I think, the same year, the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film. there is a movie that didn't have a huge budget, and it was able to use it very well. They were able to afford at least one cop, and he was in the movie, and they had those suits, and everything felt even, everything felt, cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, it's like they're trying to do these crazy helicopter chases and like these wacky, like over the top, like effects scenes. Sam Raimi's trying to do the train sequence from Spider-Man like 14 years early, and he just doesn't have the money or the technology to pull it off all the way. Mm-hmm. And so at points it just looks bad. That whole helicopter action sequence, I'm sorry, it looks bad. It looks really bad.
Especially when you have like Darkman who's swinging on a rope. I mean, it's during like the wide shots where you actually see like the stuntman on the rope on the helicopter, that looks great. But whenever like a lot of the shots where he's like clearly in front of a blue screen or green screen, I think it's a blue screen. Back in the 90s, they used blue screens maybe, but like he's standing in front of a blue screen, and you can clearly tell the background is fake, and he's like pretending to swing in the sky. It's like at that point you could have easily tried to written. You could have. I know they really wanted to make like a very large, over the top, crazy action sequence, but yeah, clearly they didn't have the money for that. But it was. Again,
they're trying to be Batman '89, and I feel like they had like half of the money.
Yeah. So in comparison, Darkman was $16 million. And that's in 1990 money. So in 2020 money, I did the math, and so $16 million, and then it's roughly an approximation of $31 million in 2020 money. And now, as for Batman '89, let's check out how much that movie costed. And that was...
And to bring back the comparison that I made before,
yes.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, also 1990, $13.5 million.
Okay, so this was a little bit more expensive than Ninja Turtles, but it's
very similar, though. They're in the same ballpark. And again, Ninja Turtles looks better. It's more like there are things in like Darkman has more highs and lows visually. It's a roller coaster ride where some things look really cool and then other things look really bad. Whereas Turtles, it's very consistent. It's like a nice it just fits like a glove. Like.
Mm-hmm. And in comparison, Batman '89 was $35 million. So near. About roughly twice the amount of money that Ninja Turtles or Darkman had.
Right. So we were right on the money. This is about they had about half the budget of that, and yet they were trying to pull off that level of spectacle. And I love them. I love them for it. I love them for trying. you got to take swings in this life, but I think they missed a lot of the time. I don't know why they chose to do that action sequence
in the daytime.
During the day.
Yeah.
How much better would that helicopter chase look if it was at night? Because you can hide things at night. It's dark. The sort of creaky effects are a little bit less noticeable. Mm-hmm. It's the movie's called Darkman.
I thought it was called Darkman, not Dayman.
It's not called David.
It's not called Light Man.
Gotta go dork. So yeah, and they're trying to imitate Batman '89. Are there any action sequences in that movie that take place during the day? And
the only the closest I can think of is, "You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts."
Yeah, that's the only one I can think of. Or the pen is truly mightier than the sword.
I remember that.
This is not really an action scene though. Or
the sequence with the mimes. Yeah, the whole everything around that.
Yeah. So, I think they were really ambitious, and they didn't quite get there. But, like I said, it's a really fun movie.
Absolutely, yeah. And one last thing in terms of special effects would be the makeup. And during the sequences where Darkman is in disguise, I like that they attempted to give their face, even though the people playing Darkman in disguise are just the actors themselves. I like that they added some level of like paleness to their skin to make it look a little more artificial looking. That that those are not the actual people. That's Darkman wearing a mask, a fake face or hands of those. And I thought
I
it was
do
pretty
like
clever.
I do like the makeup when Darkman is unmasked and we see what he looks like.
Yeah,
what he looks like under the bandages.
Right, his mostly burnt face, yeah. It's a
Right, like if you've ever wondered whether the Christopher Nolan Two-Face could have been done practically, it could have, and Darkman is the proof. Like, it's that his face is that level of fucked up, even more so because it's like 3/4 of his face as opposed to only half of it.
Yeah. And the only time where it doesn't work if you look at the face for too long and he's talking too much, then like the teeth, like the fake skeleton teeth, start to look a little bit more rubbery. The more he's like opening his mouth, luckily the majority of the time his burnt face is covered up in bandages, and that helps hide the rubbery nature of his burnt face. But near the end of the movie, where his face is just completely exposed. And you look at it a bit too long, and it starts to break down. At least for me personally. But yeah, again, solid attempt.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Whenever he's talking specifically, it doesn't move right.
Mm-hmm.
But still, the makeup looks really good. It's just that when he moves, it's a little. You can see the edges. You can see the creaks.
Mm-hmm. But,
again, look what Jim Henson did on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they had $3 million less dollars. I don't mean to turn this into a Ninja Turtles review, but damn.
Yeah, they certainly they got a lot out of their money, or they made how would you say it? They got the most out of they got the most bang for their buck there.
Right. If Darkman had spent a little less money on crazy blue screen effects that it couldn't pull off well, and a little bit more on like the makeup and like, you know, getting that to look really good, and I don't know, like come up with some more like practical action scenes that they could pull off really well. But again, you know, it's Sam Raimi. He's out there, and this was the movie he was gonna make. And you know, I think in 1990 we didn't have the technology to do a Sam Raimi superhero movie, and it wouldn't be until Spider-Man when it was like, now the technology has caught up with the madness.
Unless you could say that this was sort of like a stepping stone for eventually Army of Darkness, which did had quite a very ambitious level of special effects. Although
True, I want to say. I think Army of Darkness though has to have had a bigger budget than this did. Surely.
Yeah, I know
because they had all those practical, like, I mean, the sets and the costumes and all the practical, like
the stop motion animation,
the zombies and everything. Like, that movie had to have cost like more than this. I don't know. No, wow,
really
weird.
How much did it cost?
$11 million.
Really? Wow. And that you know, debatably looks better than Darkman's effects. And that
looks way better.
And that took place solely in like contemporary like LA or wherever.
Maybe they had leftover medieval costumes from another production or something. I don't know enough about the backstory of Army of Darkness to say. But wow, $11 million, and that movie looks really well. But again, most of the effects and stuff that happen in that movie are like practical, like makeup stuff. And whenever they do something crazy with like, you know, like weird animation and stuff, those are the parts of that movie that look a little bit creakier. So I guess it makes sense. But yeah,
okay,
maybe what Darkman really is Sam Raimi learning how to work with a budget.
Probably, yeah. I remember like watching when we were watching the movie together. You mentioned that Darkman felt like a in between moment between the Evil Dead days and the Spider-Man movies, where Spider-Man movies, his style, his directorial style felt a bit more refined. He was a bit more restricted, but at the same time it played to the strengths of the characters. And it's almost in a way like Darkman was sort of like his practice run for what he would eventually do with Spider-Man.
Yeah, so I just looked up the budgets for the other Evil Dead movies. The first one only cost $350,000.
Oh yeah, that was essentially like, I knew that movie had to be filmed on like $10 and a ham sandwich.
Yeah, that's a really cheap filmed on a potato production right there. And honestly, they did really well with that amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Dead 2, 3.5 million. Okay, so a little bit more substantial, but still, on the lower side.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Darkman is definitely the first time, because to jump from 3.5 to 16 million, that's a big jump, and so I feel like Sam Raimi is really learning how to put that money to use here, and I think he took some lessons from this into Army of Darkness and then later Spider-Man. Fascinating.
Absolutely, yeah. So
we learned a lot on this week's episode of Fully Endorsed, kids.
Indeed, we did. And if there's one thing that this movie definitely has that the budget did went to, well, it's explosions, especially like in the scene, like the chase sequence leading up to the helicopter sequence. Like there were a lot of explosions, there were rocket launchers, there was an exploding police helicopter. Darkman is running away and that shot where he like jumps over a ledge and there's like a big explosion timed to his jump was awesome. During Durant's death, where his helicopter slams into an overpass, and he's like, "Rotten, die like burn in hell, you bastard!" That was a cool sequence. So I feel like there's a lot of money was spent in decent places where the action and explosions and car chases are concerned.
That's true. He does love a good explosion in this movie. This movie may have inspired Michael Bay's whole career. I don't know. Like Terror of Mechagodzilla level of explosion set points. It's like lots of things blowing up. Let's talk about some of the characters here.
Right. So we talked a bit about Liam Neeson and how he does. I feel like he does a decent enough role at playing like a very melodramatic, almost like Shakespearean tragic character. It gave me a bit of like vibes of like The Wolfman, where what was his name? Lawrence Talbot struggles to like deal with the monster that he has become and struggling with getting a normal life. That's where I feel like the Universal monster comparison comes in. I like that idea that he can't control his emotions due to his severed nerves and the rushes of adrenaline that comes every now and then.
There's also obviously a lot of Phantom of the Opera in here.
Ooh, yes, most definitely.
Especially like later versions of Phantom of the Opera, because original Phantom of the Opera was born disfigured, whereas later versions he's becomes disfigured. It's like a big difference that happens.
And I guess you happen to be more familiar with Frances McDormand's career. For me, I believe this is my only exposure to her.
A little bit. I'm familiar with her name mostly because she won an Oscar a few years ago for 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which is a film that I have not seen and don't know much about. She was also in Transformers 3: Dark of the Moon.
Oh. She
was the secret agent lady who was like, do you remember Transformers 3: Dark of the Moon? She was sort of the
so was she like that movie's like secret agent asshole to replace the secret agent asshole from Revenge of the Fallen?
Yeah, because remember John Turturro's character in that movie, he's like retired, but then he like is helping Sam to like uncover the whole conspiracy, and she's like the new head bitch or whatever. She is like in charge of, what was that team called? It was like human soldiers
Nest.
Working. Yeah, I really hate how much we know Transformers 3 Dark of the Moon. It's better than Revenge of the Fallen,
but not by much.
Not by much. It's the second best Michael Bay Transformers movie, but not by much.
Oh
no. But yes, that's Frances McDormand.
Okay. I think she was all right.
She's been in other things, I'm sure. She's fine in Darkman,
Yeah. Let's see. I know Colin Frailes, who is kind of like I could be horribly pronouncing that name wrong, but he played the corrupt businessman, and he's about as generic as corrupt businessman type characters go. It comes up like straight out of like RoboCop 2. I would say is very hammy, very over the top, and it's a generic role, but I'd say he does the best with the material he's given. And he goes on a ludicrous speech about, it's like, I try to build things, you only destroy things. Comes out of nowhere, but it is enjoyable for what it is.
Yeah.
But the second best character easily after Darkman would be Larry Drake as Durant, who is the mob boss. I might even say best character, honestly. Like, he's so entertaining. He's one of those villains who, like, he's just chewing the scenery, and he's having so much fun, and he's got this really weird, like, specific voice, and he's like, and he's got this weird. He's definitely got like a distinct look about him.
A distinct look, a distinct personality, this weird obsession with cutting people's fingers off.
Yes, and collecting them.
He's a fascinating character. I'm almost tempted to check out the sequel only because he's in it. Almost.
Right, because prior to recording, I showed Dylan the trailers for Darkman 2 and 3, and oh boy.
Yeah, they look terrible, but I am kind of interested to see more of this guy in Darkman 2, The Return of Jafar. But yeah, he's a lot of fun. I think he was my favorite character in the movie, and then he died horribly, or so we thought. And
according to Darkman 2, The Return of Durant.
Right.
Yeah, he's got a lot of great lines to him. I like the when Darkman is impersonating Durant, he's like, he's a cockroach. He always shows up when you think you've killed him, or something along those lines.
Yeah. So he's great. He's a lot of fun. Those are really all the memorable characters, though, to be honest.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very small cast. It feels like a very small movie.
There are some other crooks in the movie, but I couldn't really tell you much about them.
Oh, Ted
None of
Raimi.
them really stand out. Ted Raimi, yeah.
Yeah, he had a great death.
None of them really stand out, though. There's no Bob from Batman 89.
No. I would say like maybe Ted Raimi's character is maybe the closest to being Bob, but he's like the first one to be offed by Darkman.
And you could argue that Durant is supposed to be Bob because the main villain. Because the main villain is the other guy. But screw the main villain. he's stupid and forgettable. Nobody likes him. He's the mob boss that Joker killed in 89. That's his equivalent. Okay? And Durant is the true Jack Nicholson of this movie. Right. And he doesn't have a Bob, and it's very, very sad.
Yeah, you don't. He needs the sequel isn't called
a number one.
Yeah,
a guy.
It's not like the sequel is called Darkman 2: The Return of Strack.
The Return of that guy. No, it's Return of Durant. He's the standout character here.
Oh, we also have to mention the cameo at the very last scene of Darkman.
Right, Darkman puts on a new face and disappears into the crowd. And whose face is it?
Arnold Vosloo. No,
no,
that's for the sequels.
No, I don't know why. Why did they get Bruce
Campbell
for the sequels? That would have been perfect.
That would have been amazing to have a Bruce Campbell-led Darkman movie. I think, as far as I know,
maybe they approached him and he wouldn't do it because Sam Raimi wasn't involved. I don't know, but instead we got Arnold Vosloo.
Yeah, we got the Mummy involved in those movies. They took my life.
Did I ever pitch you my idea for a fourth Mummy movie?
No, I don't think you did.
You use mummy magic to send Brendan Fraser back in time, and he has to fight a young Imhotep on his home turf, and you cast Rami Malek as the young Imhotep, who is actually Egyptian.
Ooh.
And who previously played an Egyptian pharaoh in the Night at the Museum films. That's neither here nor there.
Okay, so I'm looking at Bruce Campbell's filmography, and he appeared to have been busy with a few roles here and there. So during 1995 and 1996, the movies during the years that those Darkman sequels came out, he was involved in Congo, The Quick and the Dead, The Demolitionist, Fargo, and Escape from L.A.
Okay, so maybe he was just too busy.
Potentially.
Or again, maybe they approached him and he wouldn't do it because Bruce Campbell wasn't involved.
Right. Like, go fuck yourself.
I won't be involved because I'm not involved. No,
He's like,
Sam
good,
Raimi.
bad, I'm the guy with the loyalty.
I don't have time to do Darkman 2. I gotta voice a character on Megas XLR in like 10 years.
I got a couple more cameos to do for my buddy Sam.
I gotta go intro Bonesaw. I got my whole life planned out. Eventually, I'm gonna do a show on TV. It'll be an Evil Dead TV show. People will love it and nobody will watch it.
Oh no!
But it'll last for like three seasons and explode. I still haven't watched that show. I need to.
I gotta do the narrations for Spider-Man 3, the video game.
Right. You know what I would love, and I just looked it up, and there aren't really many. Mm-hmm. Darkman would be a great character, one would think, to make the transition into comics. I mean, he's already
funny you should say that because there actually have been Darkman comics in the past.
Yeah, I've looked it up. There's a 3-issue miniseries from 1990, which I'm assuming is just a comic book take on the movie.
Yeah.
Right. Then there's a 6-issue run from 1993. Who knows what that's about? Mm-hmm. Maybe that was like an attempt at doing a series and it just didn't take off. Mm-hmm. And then there's a miniseries from, let's see if I can find the year on this. Mm-hmm. I cannot find the year on this, but it's called... apparently it was published between 2006 and 2007. Dorkman versus Army of Darkness, which sounds amazing.
And guess what? I happen to own a copy of Darkman versus Army of Darkness, and actually reviewed it. I believe with I think I reviewed it with Deadpoolzilla, and it's currently on my channel for anyone interested in hearing my thoughts on our thoughts on it.
Oh,
and
so
that's really good.
All right, well that's the thing.
Yeah,
as far as I can tell, those are the only 3 Darkman runs that have been done.
Yes,
and I think
the 1990.
And I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that's a shame because again, I think this is a character who really would work on the page. I guess there's just not enough of an audience, and this is definitely not going to happen now because the comic book industry is dying.
Oh, here's the thing. Here's an interesting thing. There was actually a failed TV pitch for a Darkman television series.
Interesting. You know, I wonder if you could do a Dorkman animated series, like for adults.
Yeah, that I can totally see that working.
Like in the vein of like the Spawn show, or one of those. Like do it like super dark.
Batman Under the Red Hood. They know that kind of stuff.
Do it super dork and gritty and like get violent and like do it for adults.
Right. You know what? Like if you did like a Darkman animated series in the style of the Darkman versus Army of Darkness comic, yeah, that could totally work there. In fact, just adapt that into an animated movie and you'd be set.
Bring in somebody really good to voice Darkman, like Steve Blum or...
yeah, I can see him doing that. Well, then again, Steve Blum, he can practically do anything with cool, deep voices.
Maybe you want to go even deeper and get like a Keith David even, I don't know. Maybe you save Keith David, make him play a villain. Whatever you want to do. The point is, that could be really cool. I like this character and the idea of this character enough to want to see him done in something else besides 2 bad sequels. Maybe...
And a failed TV pilot.
Maybe, provided that Hollywood survives. When they run out of other things to remake, we can get a Darkman reboot at some point in the future, and maybe it'll actually be one of the ones that's good. It's about a 1 in a million shot. That's about a 1 in a million shot, but hey, it could happen. I hear good things about that new Invisible Man movie, you know?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Blumhouse could make it, and it can either turn out really well or really awful.
A Blumhouse Darkman movie. That actually might be the best idea. They know how to handle a budget, you know?
Potentially. If all goes well.
I don't know if they would make a superhero movie, though. Like, their take on it would probably lean much more into the horror. And so I wonder what that movie would look like.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so it's possible. Yeah, this character, this world, the lore, it's like filled with a ton of potential that could be used for so much more. But as it is, I'm very glad that, to sort of start to wrap things up, I'm very glad that, Sam Raimi was given this chance to sort of do whatever he can with this project, with this sort of passion project of his, taking what he loved about horror, old school horror movies and pulp characters, and mixing them together into his very fascinating blending and slapping his own, unique style to it all, and creating a character that, while, nowhere near as popular as the Evil Dead series, has had a following of some kind and managed to stay within the public consciousness of entertainment long enough to receive some attention here and there. And it's even got a decent release by Shout Factory on Blu-ray, which I highly recommend. There have been several releases of Darkman on DVD and Blu-ray. Some versions it's just the first movie. Some of them have the sequels. The original Blu-ray that I bought had like 0 special features. It was like a bare as bones universal release, but apparently there's a collector's edition of Darkman on Blu-ray, as well as a trilogy on Blu-ray. I'm not sure if the trilogy contains the special features that the collector's edition of Darkman has, but I don't know, I really wouldn't recommend. I would not fully endorse the sequels, so I would say you're better off just getting the collector's edition Blu-ray. But if the special features were carried over into the trilogy Blu-ray, I'd say yeah, go for it.
And I would say that if you're a Sam Raimi fan, especially, this is a must-see. If you want to see him at his wackiest, if you want to see him,
if you want to see Raimi Unchained, see this movie.
If you want to see what happens when you take a crazy indie guy and give him a budget for the first time, and just watch him go wild, and all of the greatness and the mistakes that will happen as a result of that, and it'll be glorious at points. It'll have you scratching your head at other points. It'll leave you with a general sense of just David Tennant going, what? Like,
a what?
A what? Yeah.
But I'd say either way, you're gonna have a good time regardless.
There's like a spectrum with Sam Raimi movies. Like, on the one end, you've got Oz the Great and Powerful, which is probably the least Sam Raimi movie. Uh-huh. Like, it feels like it could have been directed by anybody.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, you've got Darkman.
Right, which it's pretty much a 10 out of 10 on the Sam Raimi curve.
So dork.
Yeah. So, even at its worst points, it's still very silly, campy, melodramatic, over the top, stylish as hell. It's got everything to make it stand out from the crowd. So it's like, despite being sort of originally...
Would you say that it's campy, corny, and cheesy?
You know what? I think I would say it is campy, corny, and cheesy. And more.
And that is actually a good thing, my God.
Yes, I'd say so.
Who would have thunk?
And so,
we're playing to a very... We're playing to a very small audience with this joke.
In jokes aside.
But if you know, you know, you know.
All that aside, it's like, despite being initially coming from an idea for a Shadow movie or a Batman movie, Sam Raimi, I feel like he knocked it out of the park in creating a brand new, original piece of entertainment that I think was, it's definitely a must-watch for fans of Sam Raimi movies, for fans of for very, very offbeat, and I mean like offbeat in like the highest degree of superhero movies, or sort of vigilante slash horror movies. It's like a unique creature all unto itself, and that's why I love it. I love this movie so much for all its weirdness, for having this director, this creator, being able to do whatever the hell he wants, and that's why I respect the fuck out of Darkman. It's weird, it's strange, It doesn't work 100%, but god damn it, did I respect a creator who's free to do whatever he wants in an era where most studios kind of take more control over the films than the filmmakers themselves, unfortunately.
Absolutely, I agree. It'll be interesting to see how things go with him working with Marvel.
Indeed, yeah, because we definitely had so we've seen, or we've heard some, behind the scenes, drama involving directors and the studios they've been attached to, and the projects they've been attached to. The whole deal with what was the name of the director who left Ant-Man initially?
Shit. Why am I forgetting his name? Shaun of the Dead guy.
Yes.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, right. So he wanted more control of the project, and Disney would say, go fuck yourself. And he's like, oh, okay, I will. There's a whole drama.
And he had a damn good time.
Yeah. There's a whole thing with the Disney Star Wars stuff, practically so they had almost like a list of people, an entire list of people who were attached to projects and eventually left. Like, what was it, the people behind the Lego movie and Into the Spider-Verse. They left the Han Solo movie because Disney thought their take was too comedic, or there were reshoots for Rogue One because they thought that that Gareth Edwards' version wasn't up to snuff, or the whole thing.
At the same time, though, Kevin Feige knows what he's getting. Kevin Feige has worked with Sam Raimi before. He knows what he's getting out of Sam Raimi. I feel like if any director can work with Kevin Feige while still retaining his own sort of stamp, it's Sam Raimi. Yeah,
that is true.
Unless he's just phoning it in like he did fucking Honest, Great and Powerful. I can't believe that movie was made by the same person.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see until then to see if Sam Raimi still has the touch that he had with Darkman 30 years later. So,
does he have the touch? Does he have the power?
When all hell's breaking loose, will he be in the eye of the storm? So I'll let you take over, man. So, what are we going to check out next time on Fully Endorsed?
Well, on this series, we've done films. We've done documentaries. I almost said biographies. That's not accurate. We've done films. We've done documentaries. We've even done books, but we haven't delved into the realm of television yet. And so we're going to do a little classic Doctor Who next time and take a look at the 6-part story, the epic Genesis of the Daleks. This is top 10 Doctor Who stories of all time territory, and you're going to see it for the very first time, and I'm super excited to delve into that.
Ooh, I'm excited too, man. Especially when it deals with the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker. And I've seen a couple of Tom Baker stories, but I've often heard about Genesis of the Daleks. I mean, it's a topic that's popped up in you and Bill's conversations many times, and I'm finally happy to get in on the action.
Oh yeah, it's also the introduction of my favorite Doctor Who villain and yours. I don't know. People out there, Davros.
I definitely remember him from New Who, and if this is the first time he's been introduced, I'm excited to see where he got his start.
Indeed, it's gonna be exciting times. It's gonna be fast times at Ridgemont High here. So
Alonzi!
So not quite yet. So tune in. We will be we'll be celebrating classic Who. We'll be lamenting the death of New Who. We'll be toasting the apocalypse once again here on Fully Endorsed, episode 10. I guess that'll be.
Indeed. So please tune in next time for Doctor Who: Genesis of the Daleks. Until then, I have been Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir,
and I've been Super DM64.
And until next time, everybody, take care.